Welcome back, Left Reckoners. I'm Matt Leck. With me, as always, is David Griscom. Hello, David.
How's it going?
It's going well. And joining us now for another of our state tours is Tom Winter at Winter4MT. Tom is a former Montana legislator, a former congressional candidate for Western Montana, and an IBEW 206 member. Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, David, Matt, thank you for having me from all the way out in Montana. I appreciate it.
So whereabouts in Western Montana are you? I was just, folks might know, I took a vacation out to Montana. The second time me and my family have went out to Red Lodge. I went there this summer, and I love Montana. I'm a North Dakota boy, but the mountains of Montana have always been incredible to me. So where are you at? You in Missoula, is it?
Well, so actually, I'm in my place up in, I live in Polson, about 70 miles north. Let the record show for your viewers that I'm tilting the camera toward a large lake. And that has, it's been kind of a project for me. When I got it a couple of years ago, it was, it didn't have heat in the winter and stuff. So I've been fixing that up. Spending the pandemic here was instructive, I would say. Especially because I was formerly in Missoula and just how isolating these places can be and difficult to get services. So, but it's beautiful. Yeah, you're right. And if you were in Red Lodge, I mean,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Red Lodge, of course, had the flooding too about a few months, a few weeks or so before that. So, we can maybe touch on that a little bit too. But give folks your intro, Tom. A union guy and a legislator.
Yes. Oh, well, and relatively young for the legislature out here. I feel like a dinosaur when I walk into a bar. I'm 36. I've just started to say 39 because it seems appropriate. But it's, you walk into the legislature, however, and, especially in Montana and in these Western states, as you well know, the lack of diversity of opinion, thought, income. It's a bunch of holdover ranchers and then largely attorneys in their 50s and above, white men almost exclusively. And it is, and that was honestly one of the larger and more interesting aspects of service and public service out here. I was part of a small cohort of younger people, and again, younger in like scare quotes, because there's Gen Z is getting elected to Congress apparently before I can even eke my way in. So thank God. But that was a huge part of it. That different viewpoints, and the fact that I was so surprised that I embodied a different viewpoint even. And so being a part of the labor movement, which actually happened after my time in legislative service, but I carried bills and authored legislation to put a more robust floor on the minimum wage, and especially for apprentices, and really believe in the power of labor and honestly, the power that has waned and really fallen away. I think it's the only way, at least out here, that we can have a progressive politics that fights for people in a populist manner. And I just, it's a huge part of my politics and honestly, where I spend my time. I'm at the Union Club quite a lot when I'm down. So.
Yeah, can you just talk a little bit about Montana? Wherever you want to start. I mean, whether the economy. I was looking at some overall numbers, and I was surprised mining wasn't more. Just from being from North Dakota, I assume like mining must be like 50% of the economy, but a lot of it is services and stuff that all other states have. But I'm just curious, like, explain for folks Montana.
So you'll see a lot still, like the bumper stickers that say like if it isn't grown or harvested, it's mined. Which I thought was pretty instructive for where people actually get their stuff. But Montana doesn't really do that anymore. We are you think about, especially your listeners, we're one of those huge states the size of a mid-sized European country that's just a big rectangle, built without regard for natural topography, built without regard especially for the prior and current indigenous inhabitants. And one of the things that the national economy felt fit to do out here was use this place to pull asbestos out of the ground, to pull copper, gold. That's a prior era, however. And along with the degradation of our environment during that mining era of our economy and our society out here, it also brought strong union activity. And Butte, Montana, which has the unique, I would say, distinction of maybe unique. I don't know. It's like one of the last I would say you will still walk into Butte, Montana, which was formerly the richest hill on earth, and they pulled copper out of the ground to electrify most of the nation. And you will see guys in their 50s sitting at a bar after working in a unionized mining job, handlebar mustache. You got dirty hoodie, and you're just Fox News is going to be on. We know it. And no, it's not. It's going to be them watching MSNBC and really liking Keith Olbermann, which I'm just looking around like, whoa, that's not my thing either. It's an astonishing kind of holdover that really, especially, and when we're talking about Montana, I use Butte as an exemplar of what's going on here because it's about to fall. We are going to lose that last generation of, to be honest, white older men who worked in unionized mining jobs. And the Democratic Party here will not only, can I curse here?
Yeah, you're fine.
Will not only be so shit canned that it's just gonna, as we are now, it will be even worse. And the fact that Montana also has remained this kind of last readout of I'd say unionized activity that stays Democrat shows a lot about how our politics is just always decades behind where the nation is. And having said that, though, some of the populist aspects of our politics out here are ahead of where the nation is. And I tried to be a part of that and continue to be. And I really believe in the populist power of the lived experience of Montanans out here, how hard it is to be here. And how now, what we do is what we're forced to do in this economy is sell our landscapes. We used to sell our minerals. And now it's just, breaking up what are some of the last intact mountain ecosystems in the developed world, breaking them up into ranchettes to sell to people who really hate Los Angeles. And it is another and further tragedy and transfer of wealth that we are experiencing in a way that is altering our politics fundamentally.
Go ahead, David.
No, I'd like to get a little bit more into the history and stuff, but I did want to ask, when it comes to the Democratic Party in Montana, do you think that it was sort of mirroring what we saw in a lot of other states that sort of had a strong labor left aspect of that coalition? Or is there something unique that happened in Montana that sort of is breaking that down?
No, that was definitely the case. There was a coalition between Labor and the Democratic Party that predates me by what seems like centuries, but is probably a generation. And we've just been lucky enough to have that holdover, especially in Butte, this special place that has continued to be working class, populist Democratic politics. The party, however, I would say, has long ago aggressively not only turned its back, but started to kind of clap back at that group and look at them through a class-based lens of kind of dirty people who don't really understand it. And they could scream all day that a person from Butte might really want worker protections, believe in the power and dignity of a job that provides for your family. And the Democrats locally would be like, well, yeah, but all your class signaling makes me uncomfortable.
And is that because they're trying to recruit maybe some of those folks who are moving from Los Angeles to have a nice little ranch lifestyle?
The Democratic Party has agency at all. They're trying to do something. I think we can see nationally. Maybe I'd love to hear if you disagree, but I don't think the Democratic Party tries to do anything. I don't think it affirmatively really moves in any direction. A not very diverse coalition of interests, largely interested in maintaining the status quo, is not interested in making sure that the monthly meetings are accessible to people who work a 9 to 5 or aren't at a golf club.
Yeah, just judging, it sounds very similar to the North Dakota Democratic Party. It's interesting. We're at sort of our generation is seeing the end of certain populisms. And the miners in Montana, North Dakota, they had the agrarian populists.
Yes.
And you still see just the basic remnant of that, and that's discouraging, I guess. And is that why so there's walk us through the general state of Montana? Is it I guess, to use the parlance of Washington Post writers, a red state, a purple state, or is it I guess you say the Democratic Party is out to lunch, and that's I guess that's what, when you said they're impotent, that's what my gauge of the North Dakota Democratic Party is. They're basically they ran a guy for senator of some like 78-year-old farmer guy, and in his quote, he's like, "I ran because the party asked me to." Like, okay, thanks, thanks, buddy. Yeah,
Oh, and I have to say this too, and I because I hope people in Montana listen to this. When we talk about these things, and I think Matt, you can probably speak, probably agree. North Dakota, Montana, these are very small communities, and they've created, whether we like it or not, and how imperfectly they fit on the human and the human and like the human and also resource landscape. Montana has an identity. Montanans have identities, and if you see someone from Montana out in another state, I mean, I just geek out so hard. I'm like, oh my god, you're from Billings? No way. Billings is 6.5, 7 hours from me. It's no, and I don't go to Billings. Like, so when we talk about these parties and when I talk about what's happening here, I don't want to claim to be the expert, but I can speak to my experience, and I can speak to the experience that we've seen in the outcomes of our elections. Now, Montana's been so lucky. And there's been something going on that's worth saving, different from North Dakota, I'd say, because, disagree as we might, I'd say, as I consider myself a leftist and a populist progressive. Steve Bullock was our governor. We had 16 years of unbroken Democratic governors. We have John Tester, who's a Democrat. The state has sent, until Steve Daines, who's our other senator, he's a Republican. Until Steve Daines, we sent an unbroken line of Democratic senators to the United States Senate since the founding of the state. We were Democrat until really recently. And, I might have, say that I'd been alive in that era, which is not that long ago. I might have disagreed with it. I might have had a lot of problems with a lot of the things they did. I certainly do still. But it would have been a hell of a lot better than having, a bunch of actual bigots, a bunch of actual racists, a bunch of people who really do openly hate people, women, as in charge, which is what we're seeing. And I just, speaking to Matt, what you're talking about North Dakota too, this echo of our former really strong populist past is, and to watch and to be alive during this time when it seems to be, the echo seems to be getting even lesser and less audible, is so depressing, but also shows the urgency of what we have to build. And the fact that we're blessed to have that history is something that I really like to talk about. I like to say, like, no, Greg Gianforte, who's our governor, big belt buckle, the whole thing, he's what is he? No, he's a tech billionaire from New Jersey. Our only at-large congressman at this point, because we're getting a new one, is a mall developer from Maryland with like a heavy accent. And they bought their little properties when they had their midlife crises and their stupid little, their hunting laws and all that shit. And they're just taking this place over without any understanding about what was built here before and was the work of generations of actual populist progressives. That's especially here what makes a lot of the politics and my disappointment so acute with so many people. We're not that far away from what we had. And it's just to see it go away and everyone be like, yeah, fuck it. Montana was always full of idiot rubes. It wasn't, right. And it's not. And nor is North Dakota.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing is, like, one of my earliest political memories was being on the eastern part of the state. And like, my parents were vaguely like Bush supporters in 2000, but we went back over to the eastern part where my mom's from, and that sort of came out. And I remember people saying, I don't know how you could ever vote for a Republican. And here that kind of blew my mind. Like, I've never seen such like sort of pro-Democrat or anti-Republican sort of from like, and these are farmers.
I know. Well, I mean, so like in my district that I represented was in the state house was voted for Trump plus 11 points. And I was like unabashedly not as I think actually at the time I was new to politics. I was not as cogently progressive and I didn't know how to use the language. I think I do it better now. But my policies were, I was talking about universal health care. We were doing Medicaid expansion. We were talking about the fundamental right to health guaranteed by the state. Hopefully progressive enough. Those people voted for me after they voted for Trump and a Republican. I was always like, ooh, like, what did I do? But a lot of that also was lingering distrust of, I think, the Republican Party, but also of big corporations and exemplified by, our economy, which is, is just predatory and exploitative. And in the face of, exemplified by big corporations, we live in everyone talks about how beautiful Montana is. And like, yeah, it's beautiful. It's recovering from 2 generations of resource extraction that scarred this place more than most just because no one was looking. Like the town of Libby, where they pulled out asbestos. I mean, what was it? Until the 80s, the mining company was still fighting that asbestos caused mesothelioma. That community, the town of Libby, is devastated for the next 2 generations. Living there is hazardous. And that exemplifies, that happens a lot of places out in the rural West. And if we were closer to a major market, it wouldn't just be one Mother Jones article from 1995 that I can point you to, which is called Libby's Deadly Grace. And if you want to weep silently about what outsiders do to places that are not prepared to fight back and are not given the resources to do so and are abandoned by their regulators and government, there's your sad cry for Tuesday. But that is what I believe and I hope brought people to the side of my candidacy.